wasn't at all self-conscious about it. It didn't seem to me that making a documentary was really any different than making any other film. I suppose it was a somewhat different approach in that the documentary I allowed the material to reveal itself, tell its own story. I didn't have a story. Nothing was written beforehand.
Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you, and if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself. And where I am, there ye may be also. And whither I go ye know, and the way ye know.
Zanuck had been up there, and he wanted a picture made about the Aleutians. It was and about the bombing of the Japanese emplacements up there, and he thought it should be told. The narration in a report from the Aleutians was written by Coleman Lanter up there in a tent. On the island of Adak, and slowly the shape of the thing appeared, and we'd do shots and some of them on the missions we flew, and some just interviews with pilots and co-pilots and crew members, and some religious services, and the living on the island, and slowly it all came together. This for a report from the Aleutians.
A monument ought to be put up to that pre-war fraternity of high school speed maniacs. For out of their ranks, our fighter pilots are largely drawn. They bring to their hazardous undertakings split-second judgment, inspiration, daring. Lieutenant George I. Riddell, 12 strafing missions over Kiska. Lieutenant Hawley P. Mills, 14 missions. Lieutenant Lyle A. Bean, 13 missions. Major Milton Ashkin, 15 missions. Lieutenant Henry J. Strankowski, 11 missions. Colonel Jack Chenault, son of General Chenault of the Flying Tigers. Colonel Jack has a 0 on a submarine to his credit. It is 12:40 o'clock, and the pilots who are going to fly the mission receive final instructions. 3 flights, 2 of B-24s and 1 of B-17s are to go over the target. The first flight at 1,100 feet to drop 500-pounders on anti-aircraft installations at North Head. The second flight at 7,500 feet to drop 1,000-pound bombs on the camp area. The third flight at 4,500 feet to destroy hangars with 500-pound bombs. Second and third flights to follow at intervals of 45 seconds. 3 fighters to precede each bomber flight at 600 feet and 3 fighters to afford overhead protection from enemy aircraft.
There was a little bit of the hurrah in it. Mm-hmm. We were cheering our own boys on, as it were.
You mean the casualties?
In one of the missions, we said that everybody returned. The mission returned unscathed, as it were.
Yeah.
Well, very rarely did missions return unscathed, but that was to put heart in a country that. Which had been staggered, of course, by the Japanese in Hawaii. I don't think they expected anything as detailed and as complete as it turned out to be. By the way, it was to be a propaganda film. And I'm afraid there are elements of that show in Report from the Aleutians, as against what you see, for instance, in San Pietro.
let's go on to San Pietro, because how did that happen? Because again, it's a very cohesive film. It's very clearly your movie.
I was just told to proceed to Italy, and there get a crew. There would be a Signal Corps crew waiting for me. I'd met a man whom I admired very much, a very fine writer, of course, Eric Ambler, and he was a captain in the British Army, and we wangled orders for him to come along with me, and we arrived first in North Africa, then proceeded to airport to Naples, and from Naples on up to Army at Caserta, and from there on out into the field of operations.
From the end of October 1943 until the middle of December, San Pietro and the surrounding ground was the scene of some of the bitterest fighting on our Fifth Army front. The push forward again after a static period brought on by heavy seasonal rains. Our battle lines were haphazard as the terrain itself, with its flood-swollen rivers that twisted back and forth across our line of march so that each river seemed like five. And where there was no river to cross, a mountain blocked our going, each peak ahead being a few meters higher than the last we had won, so that each new peak had to be fought for, the hard, uphill way, with the enemy looking down our throats.
However, we proceeded kind of inch by inch until we got to the threshold of Leary Valley, which was defended by the little town San Pietro. And Eric and I made one foray into Leary Valley. There'd been an attack, and the attack had been repulsed, and we went forward ahead of the next attack, of the attack that was to follow, and it was quite a day. There were numbers of dead men. Rain had just fallen, and men dead behind their machine guns, and everything looking very bright, and the sun had come out after the rain. We set out at dawn to go to what we thought was an evacuated objective. Well, it turned out not to be evacuated. The Germans were there in force, and they let go at us, and we dived for cover, and then some mortar shells came in. We were behind a wall, and that saved our lives. Some mortar shells came in, and there was smoke and dust, and we were able to escape. Otherwise, we'd have been either shot or taken prisoner. Often thought the Germans must have wondered I remember I had a sprained ankle, and I was walking with a stick, and Eric was of course, in his British uniform. Well, the enemy must have looked at us askance. Cut. God damn little dog. The crew was largely composed of combat-trained cameramen from Astoria and Monmouth. I used not one, but several crews. There were continual replacements.
Of the the original force to establish the beachhead at Salerno, the 143rd had since spent all but a fortnight in action under extremely bitter weather conditions. At Salerno, at the Volturno crossing, it had taken mortal punishment. The task ahead promised no less bloodshed, yet it was undertaken in good spirits and high confidence. The 1st Battalion began the long, rugged climb up Mount Sinupro.
Well, they were a wonderful outfit. It had largely to do with the 36th Texas Infantry Division, the 142nd, and we were attached to them, and just it was the story of that regiment in the operation. Mm-hmm. It was, by the way, it was 100% replacements.
It had rained most of the night, and it was raining at each hour when the 2nd and 3rd Battalions crossed the line of departure. Some 200 yards forward, they encountered mines and automatic fire from pillboxes. Artillery were deadly accurate by reason of excellent enemy observation from Mount Lungo, overlooking our advance, which continued another 200 to 400 yards.
One, a sound man, and who had his assistant, and 3 cameramen, and a lieutenant, and a sergeant. They all shot. There five cameramen, one sound man, and boom man.
See, that absolutely astounds me, because I've never heard of any sound crew going anywhere near combat in World War II.
Yes.
We never even dreamed of.
Yes, well, there was, I used them to very, very good advantage. I have conversations with men before an attack, or sometimes at night. Conversations, I'd ask them what the war was about, what we were fighting for. And sometimes they were very eloquent in their answers.
Volunteer patrols made desperate attempts to reach enemy positions and reduce strong points. Not a single member of any such patrol ever came back alive. Many men gave their lives in attempts to reach pillboxes and throw hand grenades through the narrow gun openings. The 3rd Battalion was committed.
Tus tráilers. Visita mi canal.
But the advance never got more than 600 yards past the line of departure. Our initial assault on San Pietro had been repulsed with heavy casualties.
We, a number of these men whose that I'd talked with were casualties And I photographed them being put into their mattress covers. That required sitting them up and pulling the mattress cover around them so their faces would come into the camera. And I had the lines, the words that they said in their own voices, their own words and their own voices, over those close-ups of the men themselves. And I suppose it was too effective, too emotional, and I agree. Quite rightly, it was deleted from the material, from the final material. That and a few other shots that were probably brutalizing in their rather too much to take.
Our attacking forces were furnished excellent aerial cover by Allied fighter patrols. But now and then, enemy planes were able to slip through and to bomb and strafe our positions, which to all purposes had remained unchanged since the first day. To break the deadlock, orders were given for a coordinated divisional attack. The 2nd and 3rd Battalions of the 143rd to proceed in the execution of the original orders. Acting in conjunction, Company A of the 753rd Tank Battalion to attack San Pietro from the east over the high road. 1 battalion of the 141st to attack over the flat valley floor. After nightfall on D-Day, the 142nd Infantry Regiment to attack Mount Lungo. The earlier decision not to attack those strategic heights having been reversed in view of the present critical situation. In preparation for the attack, all 5th Army artillery within range, including tanks and all tracks, was directed against San Pietro and the surrounding area. H hour, 1200 hours. D-Day, the 15th of December. The 141st Infantry advanced some 400 yards from its line of departure, to be borne down and held powerless under the weight of enemy fire. The 2nd and 3rd Battalions of the 143rd advanced some 100 yards beyond their former positions to a point almost directly before forward enemy defenses. And for the 3rd time, they were forced to take such cover as the quaking earth could offer. And the tanks. Orders were for them to enter the town and to locate and destroy the heavy weapons there, which were leveled against our attacking foot soldiers. The high road into San Pietro is a narrow mountain road, and from the beginning of its winding descent in the Liri Valley, it was under direct enemy observation. "16 tanks started down that road. 3 reached the outskirts of the town. Of these, 2 were destroyed, and 1 was missing. 5 tanks were immobilized behind enemy lines, their crews having to abandon them. 5 tanks hit enemy mines within our lines and were thereupon destroyed by enemy gunfire. 4 tanks returned to the bivouac area. After dark, 2 companies, 1 from the 2nd Battalion and 1 from the 3rd, finally succeeded in penetrating enemy positions before San Pietro. But receiving both frontal and flanking fire, they were forced to retire. Company E having been reduced in strength to a handful of riflemen, and Company L faring little better. On the Mount Samocro Ridge, the 1st Battalion fought its way to within a few hundred yards of the objective. But it had paid for ground gained at the rate of a man a yard, and it did not have strength to carry the fight any further forward. On Mount Lungo, however, despite bitter resistance, battalions of the 142nd in successive waves kept pushing upwards until, in the early daylight hours of the 16th of December, its foot soldiers had gained the summit and were wiping up what remained of a stubborn enemy. And that height proved to be a key position in the enemy plan of defense, for even as Mount Lungo fell, the enemy throughout the San Pietro area made preparations to withdraw. Almost invariably, the enemy will counterattack to cover a withdrawal. The first violent thrust was delivered within a few hours. And thereafter, counterattacks came in waves, the roar of the last mingling with the rush and fury of the next to bring. Many companies lost all their officers. Enlisted men came forward as inspirational leaders to rally their battered companies into resisting yet one more onslaught. Our own artillery was brought to fall within 100 yards of our front-line elements. After 5 hours, during which the earth never ceased to tremble, counterattacks ended, indicating that the withdrawal of the enemy's main body had commenced. In an effort to maintain contact with the enemy, our patrols immediately pushed ahead. Entering the town, they discovered that San Pietro was ours for the taking.
However, San Pietro was, it wasn't liked at all at the Pentagon when I showed it. Those scenes had been deleted, by the way, already. And maybe 1 or 2 of them were in the picture, I forget, but for the most part, it was not sensational. And they were shown in a projection room, big brass. There was one 3-star general there, and 2 or 3 2-star generals, and a number of 1-star generals. I remember the ranking officer rising someplace around, a third of the picture been shown, rising and then leaving the theater. And when he was gone, the next ranking officer rose, and he left. And so they went, one after the other, until I was alone, or practically so, in the room. I thought, what assholes.
The 2nd and 3rd Battalions, less than a rifle company in strength, weary to death who were alive, stumbled forward past San Pietro to consolidate gains and re-establish contact with the enemy, now taking up new positions some 5 kilometers beyond. That is the broad shape of the Battle of San Pietro, which was but the first of many battles in the Erie Valley. It was a very costly battle. After the battle, the 143rd Infantry Regiment alone required 1,100 replacements. The lives lost were precious lives to their country, to their loved ones, and to the men themselves. For the living of the 143rd Infantry Regiment, more than 100 decorations for acts of valor above and beyond the call of duty. Many among these you see alive here have since joined the ranks of their brothers in arms who fell at San Pietro. For ahead lay San Vittore and the Rapido River and Casino, and beyond Casino more rivers and more mountains and more towns, more San Pietros, greater or lesser, 1,000 more.
The time I got back to the photographic division of the Single Corps, why the disgrace had already been rumored, and I was regarded, I'm afraid, as something of a pariah, and they didn't know what to do with me. For some time, a couple of weeks, I guess, went past. And then, by one of those fortunate accidents, General George C. Marshall saw the film. I suppose he'd heard enough bad things about it to enlist his interest. And his reaction was exactly the opposite of everyone's else. He said that their ostensible reason, they declared that it was be unfit for Army personnel to see the film because it would be demoralizing for men for men who were headed for combat. And Marshall said that they were the very men who should see such a film to prepare them for the experience of combat. Well, the atmosphere changed overnight. I was decorated, and I was made a major. That was the end of that chapter.
As the battle passed over and beyond San Pietro, westward, townspeople began to appear, coming out of their caves in the mountains where they had stayed in hiding during the enemy occupation. They were mostly old people and children.
Tus trailers, visita mi canal.
The townspeople were warned against enemy mines and booby traps, which were in the process of being cleared. Children are able to forget quickly. Yesterday they wept. Today there are smiles and even laughter. Tomorrow it will be as though the bad things had never happened.
I hadn't seen many documentaries. A few of the British pictures, Bob Flaherty's, The River.
You'd seen none of them?
I'd seen those. But as I say, that it didn't. I wasn't aware of any sharply dividing line between a documentary and a feature picture, except that the one that I talked about in the feature picture, you wrote the script first and then shot the picture. And in the documentary, you shot the picture and then let the script come out of it.
Well, you knew Flaherty at this time, didn't you?
Oh, very well. When I came back from Italy, having shot San Pietro, I saw a great deal of Flaherty. I saw him almost every day over a period of weeks and months.
Living was resumed in San Pietro. Our prime military aim being to engage and defeat the enemy, the capture of the town itself and the liberation of its people is of an incidental nature. But the people in their military innocence look upon us solely as their deliverers. It was to free them and their farmlands that we came.
Tus trailers, visita mi canal.
Behind our lines, southwest of the sea, the fields are green with growing crops planted after our coming by other people of other towns who believed likewise. The new one earth at San Pietro was plowed and sown. It should yield a good harvest this year. And the people prayed to their patron saint to intercede with God in behalf of those who came, delivered them, and passed on to the north with the passing battle.
There were a few pictures like that during the war. Willie Wyler's Memphis Belle, and which was a very personal account. Willie went on all the missions himself, and they're pretty rough occasions they were too. And Jack Ford. Then later on in the Pacific. But yes, I suppose San Pietro was probably the first personal account. It was personal in the sense that it was actually witnessed by the camera. Diego, come here, boy. Come on, bring it over here. That's a fella. That's a fella. Oh, yes. Come on, bring it over here. He means take the sound out of the way, dear. He's trying to photograph the dog. Yeah, so come on, Diego. Come on, boy. Come on, here. Just, lost in admiration. But Bob did. He was the great master of the documentary, as far as I was concerned. And then, during the period that you talk about, while I was cutting San Pietro and was in New York on and off, whenever I was there, I spent most of my leisure time with Bob.
A family of 8 lives in this box of a trailer. Some of them were born in it, born on the road. They make the best of it. Work is what they want, any kind of work. Along our highways, there are more than 1 million homeless people. We came to this family moving out. The land had played out on us, he said. Most of our migrants are young people with young children. We had another name for these people once. We called them pioneers. Heading west, that's where most of them go.
The noblest of Romans. He was a wonderful man, a joy to be with, a marvelous companion. He loved to talk and loved to hear other people talk. Wonderful raconteur. Didn't listen to himself, but had wonderful stories. He didn't repeat himself, though. He was never guilty
Visita mi canal.
as so many raconteurs are, of having speaking from a platform, as it were. He was a joy to be with. A wonderful man, completely honest. I've rarely met a man of such integrity. Willie Wyler went on mission after mission. They were very rough missions indeed. And the Memphis Belle survived. So did Willie.
26. Not a scratch. The control tower learns that 2 more landed at a British field to the south. 1 a crash landing, crew safe. That makes 28. 29. A rough landing, but her pilot's badly hurt. It's a wonder he brought her back at all. 29 planes back, so far. 29 out of 36. In the control tower, Colonel Ray is still watching and waiting. And then he spots the last flight. 3 more planes. And one of them is the ship everyone has been pulling for.
The Memphis Belle. The last few miles of this trip have been a joyride. The strain is over. They can leave their guns now. Now they know they're going to go home. To Spokane, Green Bay, Asheville, Detroit, Chicago, Fort Worth, and Yonkers.
Story about Willie Wyler I'm talking about, of course. It was discovered that hadn't occurred to anybody that Willie was Jewish. And this was brought to the attention of Jewish spots. If the plane was knocked out and Willie parachuted to safety, why he wouldn't be accorded the same treatment as other flyers. They didn't They didn't have Jews flying on those missions for that very reason. So Dewey Spotts issued orders that Willie was not to fly anymore. And Willie disobeyed those orders. And right on flying. And there was nothing they could do. They couldn't court-martial him.
The wheels of the Memphis Belle come back to the soil of England for the 25th time. This is a day they will never forget.
Documentaries have a tendency to describe rather than to allow the stories to tell themselves. They even when they're poetic, they become epic. There's that inclination. So that some very fine documentaries, by the way, but there's that sense of detachment that one often sees. I followed one group through the hospital. Having stayed in the hospital for some time, I thought that would be the best approach, and to follow them from their induction, from the first time they filed in and sat down in the receiving room, and it was explained to them. By the way, the cameras were set up for that, and it was explained to them by an officer that what the cameras were doing there, and that the cameras would continue to follow them through their treatment. And at this moment, the men, the patients, immediately on their arrival, couldn't have cared less. They were so deep in their own despair and shock that the presence of the camera made absolutely no difference.
Tráilers, visita mi
The guns
canal.
are quiet now. The papers of peace have been signed. And the oceans of the earth are filled with ships coming home. In faraway places, men dreamed of this moment. But for some men, the moment is very different from the dream. Here is human salvage, the final result of all that metal and fire can do to violate mortal flesh. Some wear the badges of their pain, the crutches, the bandages, the splints. Others show no outward signs, yet they too are wounded. This hospital is one of the many for the care and treatment of the psychoneurotic soldier. These are the casualties of the spirit, the troubled in mind, men who are damaged emotionally. Born and bred in peace, educated to hate war, they were overnight plunged into sudden and terrible situations. Every man has his breaking point, and these, in the fulfillment of their duties as soldiers, were forced beyond the limit of human endurance.
At ease, man. On behalf of the commanding officer and his staff of Mason General Hospital, I want to extend a hearty welcome to all of you on your return to the United States. There's no need to be alarmed at the presence of these cameras, as they're making a photographic record of your progress at this hospital from the date of admission to the date of discharge.
Here are men who tremble, men who cannot sleep, men with pains that are nonetheless real because they are of mental origin, men who cannot remember, paralyzed men whose paralysis is dictated by the mind. However different the symptoms, these things they have in common: unceasing fear and apprehension, a sense of impending disaster, a feeling of hopelessness and utter isolation.
May I have your last name? How do you spell that? M-E-I-S.
May I have your last name, please?
Oliver. And your how do you spell that?
The psychiatrists listen to the stories of the men who tell them as best they can.
It was the War Department that said no. So it's awfully hard being outraged with the War Department for a very long period of time.
The names and places are different. The circumstances are different. But through all the stories runs one thread: death and the fear of death.
And then after you got wounded, what happened? Same thing, only worse?
Seems like my nerves keep getting worse on.
So they get worse.
These airplanes, they bombed.
Yeah.
I got killed nearly one.
You nearly got killed. Where were you at the time?
St. Louis, I believe. Somewhere. I don't remember.
And what were you doing when the planes came over?
I was in a hole.
You know where you are?
I think I'm in the States now. They told me I was coming back.
Right.
But they told me I was going to die.
No.
On the hospital, I wouldn't eat hardly.
No, you're
If
not.
I was sick, I wouldn't eat hardly. They told me I was going to die, but then he couldn't help me.
Well,
Told me they didn't care where I died or not.
we will see that you don't die. You won't die.
I lost my last buddy up there, Little Norman. He was second scout, and I was first scout. And they were all mixed up there. They were shelling us. And
Well, did that make you nervous?
I should have been first scout. I'm first scout, and I should have been out in front. And he went out, and I started to go out after him, and he got shot. And he just said, "Oh, Dutch, I'm hitting." He crawled to my feet.
Tus trailers. Visita mi canal.
I started calling for the medic, and I went back to see if we could get the medic, and there wasn't any, and I started to go out after him again, and they wouldn't let me go. And he was the last one of the original boys that was with me. Him and I were the last two left out of the original.
And when you were shelled, how did you feel?
I don't know, it's just after Norman got hurt or killed, why, I was all right when we were moving up or attacked and anything like that. When we get pinned down, I start thinking about him laying back there.
And then what happened to you when you think about him? How would you feel?
I just didn't care what happened to me.
Do you mean you didn't want to go back into combat again?
Yes, sir, I wanted to go back. I wanted to stay there. I wanted to keep on for him and all them other guys, John and Stryker and Tex and Pop.
And how do you feel right now?
I feel all right.
How have you been getting along?
Well, fairly well, sir.
Mm-hmm. You overseas?
Yes, sir.
Where?
We were in France, and then we went to Germany.
In where?
France to Germany.
And what outfit were you with?
I was with Headquarters Detachment, 50th Quartermaster Battalion, Mobile.
Mm-hmm. I see your PFC.
At present, sir.
You had to go in the hospital.
Sir?
You had to go in the hospital.
Twice, sir.
It says here on your record from overseas that you had headaches and that you had crying spells.
Yes, sir. I believe in your profession is called nostalgia.
In other words, homesickness.
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm.
It was induced when, shortly before the war, I received a picture of my sweetheart.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, I can't continue.
That's all right. Griffith.
Yes, sir.
Come on and sit down a minute. Now, a display of emotion is all right.
I'm not doing this deliberately, sir.
Of course
Please
you
believe me.
I do believe you. A display of emotion is sometimes very helpful.
I hope so, sir.
Sure, it gets it off your chest. You wouldn't be here. You wouldn't have been returned. As a patient, if there wasn't something upsetting you.
Yes, sir.
Well, now,
Sorry.
you say you had received a letter from your...
Not a letter, sir, a photograph.
A photograph, yes. Well, what about that now?
Well, sir, to be perfectly honest with you, I'm very much in love with my sweetheart. She has been the one person that gave me a sense of importance, and that through her cooperation with me, we were able to surmount so many obstacles.
What happened? Well, when I was in combat, Mindanao.
Can you speak louder? I have
Yes,
trouble hearing you.
During the time, I got worried that my brother, he was killed in Guadalcanal.
Oh, was he a Marine?
Yes.
Now, I noticed in this history here that you saw a vision of your brother. What, tell me something about that. What happened?
Oh, I guess it was a dream.
Well, describe the dream. What did you see in the dream?
I dreamt that I was home, my brother was home, and my other brother was home. We all were home.
All of you were home?
Sitting around the table. Everybody was happy. We were laughing, talking, just admiring each other's. And then it ended there.
You could see these images clearly.
Yeah, it was like in a dream.
What about this Mindanao thing you're telling me about?
Well, in Mindanao, after I got that news, I admit I was scared.
You were scared?
I don't know, sometimes I hope something would happen. Then again, I say, well, something did happen.
What do you mean by something happened? You mean you were hoping that you'd be wounded and sent back? Is that what you mean?
No.
What do you mean by that?
I meant that I hoped that just, I was so disgusted and tired of everything. I just didn't feel like living. And then I changed my mind and I think about my folks, and it'd be a double blow if something happened to me. And I'd be standing guard, sitting on a machine gun there, just watching. And I'd hear a little noise and I'd let go, shoot. Wasn't nothing, probably was an animal or something.
Any noise made you excited, you'd just shoot?
At that time, yes.
Well, do you feel worried about anything now?
I don't know.
Are you mixed up?
Kind of.
What's that pin on your shirt then?
My heart.
Well, why do you cover those up? Aren't you proud of them?
Yes, sir.
You got a Purple Heart? Your campaign ribbons?
Yes, sir.
Well, why do you cover them up? And there must be some reason for you doing that. Well, what happened over there?
We got in the scrape and I was in the house there and just got off of guard duty and it was Friday the 13th and we were sweating it out all day. And patrol came up, and German patrol, and they shot a Panzerfaust through the wall.
And what?
I was laying on the couch and right before it happened I felt a little jittery, so I laid down on the floor. And when I got up again, the couch was all torn.
In other words, you were almost killed, is that it?
Most of them must have gone right over my head.
Do you feel conscious, are you aware of the fact that you are not the same boy that you were when you went over? Do you feel changed?
Yes.
In what way?
I'm more jumpy.
How about with people?
I used to always like to have fun now. I used to always be going places. I don't like to do nothing no more.
How long were you overseas? 11 months. 11 months. Were you in any combat at all? This is 6 months, yeah.
I tried every way to keep my mind occupied. Reading, going to the gymnasium, going out with the fellas and trying to become an extrovert, try to get out of myself. But it seemed to me that I got worse and worse. And after a while, I developed, after the fear of insanity, I started developing fears of different sorts.
Did you ever have similar pains before you got
Never
married?
in my life.
Have you ever been nervous before in your life?
No, sir. Never. I was a solid man.
Do sudden noises bother you particularly?
I did just shake a little, but not that bad.
Well, I guess I just got tired of living, you can put it that way.
I had trouble sleeping, yes. Had dreaming of combat, you know.
I just took off because I seen too many of my buddies gone, and I figured the next one was for me. A man can just stand so much up there, see.
Admission note. Poole. P-O-O-L-E, comma, Walter L. T5. Transfer diagnosis. Anxiety reaction, severe. Active symptoms, in remission.
On this, their first night back in the States, each man who is able may make a long-distance call without cost. After months and years of silence, familiar voices are heard once again. Then each man makes for himself a small home, which will be his for the 8 or 10 weeks to come. Now in the darkness of the ward emerge the shapes born of darkness, the terror of things half remembered, dreams of battle, the torments of uncertainty and fear and loneliness.
We had fine cameramen, professional cameramen, Stanley Cortez, who's still a fine photographer in Hollywood, the first order, was the head cameraman. We had plenty of time to set up and light, and for instance in the interrogations, why the camera, we'd we'd have the setups and the cameras, and then just bring people in and sit them down, and the interrogations would take place. These there was a great amount of footage was shot that way. But every once in a while something completely unexpected and quite memorable would happen, would occur. And those fortunate accidents we were able to photograph in ideal conditions.
This man suffering from a conversion hysteria requires immediate treatment. Organically sound, his paralysis is as real as if it were caused by a spinal lesion, but it is purely psychological.
Well, just sit him up about the middle of the bed there. I feel pretty good, huh? That's fine. Now sit yourself over there. Well, now, can you move over just a little so I can talk to you?
Yes, sir.
Now, what is the trouble? You think there'll be a... What's that?
That's nervous. Yes, it make me flinch like that.
I see. How long has that been going on?
Since Friday.
Friday
night.
Come on suddenly or gradually?
Suddenly, sir.
How?
Well, I started in the afternoon with crying spells. And felt something funny in my shoulders here. Back bothered me. I started crying. I wasn't controlling my legs and my arms.
Was there any reason for crying spells?
I don't know, sir.
Anything happen at home to bother you?
Well, my mother's been ill.
She has been ill.
That's right.
That worry you a lot?
Quite a bit.
Well, now, has this got anything to do with your mother's illness? Any reason why you should have that kind of reaction?
No, sir, not that I know of. Unless my mother's illness might have brought this on. I tried to hold in about the hurts, but...
I see. You've just been holding these things in.
That's right, sir.
No way you can control this at all?
No, sir.
Well, now we're going to have to help you do that, of course. Let's take off this jacket here. Just slip that off. All right, now lie down on the bed. Right, now we'll leave the shoes on so you can walk in them. I think we're going to get you walking. Let's come over here. That's the boy. That's fine. That's good. Now you lie steady. Lie steady. That's the boy. This is all going to go away as I give you this medicine. No bother at all.
The method employed here is effective in certain types of acute cases. An intravenous injection of sodium amytal induces a state similar to hypnosis.
What a torpedo that is. You mind if I look this way?
You look that way. There's nothing for you to watch here, but you're going to talk to me as we go along.
Yes, sir.
That's all. Now, you're not going to feel much of anything else. You're going to feel a little bit woozy.
The use of this drug serves a twofold purpose. Like hypnosis, it is a shortcut to the unconscious mind. As a surgeon probes for a bullet, the psychiatrist explores the submerged regions of the mind, attempting to locate and bring to the surface the emotional conflict which is the cause of the patient's distress. The second purpose of this drug is to remove, through suggestion, those symptoms which impede the patient's recovery.
Now tell me a little bit about what you're thinking of. The thoughts are coming to your mind now.
Nothing in particular.
Well, now let's go back. Let's go back to Friday.
Friday?
Yeah, think about that.
Friday. My mother argues with me.
Your mother argues with you?
Yeah.
What does she argue about?
Well, every little thing. If you sit down in a long chair or something like that. Doesn't like the stuff you get in the store. Then she calms down.
Well, see, have you always tried to please her?
Yes.
Always tried to please her.
She used to clean the house for her when I was small.
Well, now, why do you think she argues like that? Because she's sick?
Well, she doesn't try to control her temper.
I see. How about your father?
He's a swell guy.
He's a swell fellow, isn't he?
Gets kind of hot-tempered. Since my mother's been sick, it's been costing a lot of money. And he's lost a lot of weight about worrying.
I see.
My mother argues with him. She wants to know where the money is. But I don't care about that as long as everything turns out all right.
Well, now, this jumping, what does that make you think of? Think about it a minute.
Oh, I can't help it. It just jumps.
How about the legs? Do you know anybody who had any trouble with their legs like that?
No, sir.
And what does it make you think of? Go on.
Except several years ago, there was one fella. He had something wrong with his right leg. Water in the knee, but he's walking today. That hasn't bothered me.
Was that anything like your leg?
I don't know. He couldn't walk at all.
He couldn't walk at all?
No.
What do you think of when you can't walk like that?
I wish I could walk.
Well, what do you think of? What comes to your mind when you find that you can't walk?
So maybe I think our mother and father should be okay. Sometimes I wonder, hope the war ends soon. Things like that. Nothing in particular.
Well, now the shakes are gone now, haven't they?
Yeah.
How about your legs? They're good and strong.
I feel all right.
Move them. Let's raise them.
Oh, I don't say but raising before, but I can't walk.
Well, how about them now?
They feel all right.
They feel good now, as if you can walk in them, don't they?
Toes feel numb.
Toes feel numb, but that's going away, isn't it?
Yeah. Gee.
So, raising them fine, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now you're going to be able to walk, aren't you?
I don't know.
Well, you're going to, aren't you?
Yes, sir.
All right.
I'm gonna walk. I love walking.
You love walking.
I did.
Always been very fond of walking. Now you found yourself unable to walk. Now you're going to get right up and walk. Right now. All right, now let's sit up. Sit up on the side of the bed. Here you are. That's fine. All right, now stand up. Now look at that. Is that good? All right, now walk out here. Walk over to the nurse all by yourself. That's the boy. Walk over to the nurse. You're just a little woozy. That's the medicine. Now come back to me. Come back to me. Open your eyes. That's the boy. Isn't that fine? Isn't that wonderful?
Sure.
All right, now again, once more.
Yeah, but how long are we gonna be?
Oh, it's going to stay that way. It's going to stay because that's taking care of your worry now. All right, now come on back to me, and I'm going to let you go to sleep. When you wake up, you'll keep on walking perfectly well. How about it?
Thanks, sir.
Righto. All right, now let's get up in here and we'll go to sleep. Yeah, there you are. Now I'm going to have you go right to sleep. When you wake up, it'll be all right.
Thanks.
All right, sleep, Girardi.
The fact that he can walk now does not mean that his neurosis has been cured. That will require time. But the way has been opened for the therapy to follow.
Going back to Okinawa. You can talk. You can talk. You can remember everything. You can remember everything. You're back on Okinawa. Tell me what you see. Tell me. Speak.
I'm in the battery area.
You're in the battery area. Go on. Tell me what's going on.
Getting fire missions.
You're getting fire missions. Go on. You see everything now, clearly.
Getting shells thrown at us.
You're getting shells thrown at you. From where?
Japs.
Japs. Go on. Yes. Keep on. You remember it all now. Every bit of it's coming back.
Japs getting near us to get our position.
Japs getting near you to get your position. Go on.
Told us to get covered.
Who told you to get cover?
BC.
BC. Go on.
There's 5 of us. One of the boys got hurt.
One of the boys got hurt.
Took him away. I was running over to my gun position.
Yes, go on. You remember it now. Tell me. It's all right now, but you can tell me. You can tell me.
Explosion?
Yes. You remember the explosion now. All right, go on.
They're carrying me.
They're carrying you. Who's carrying you?
I don't know.
Where are they taking you?
Carrying me across the field.
Across the field. Go on.
Put me in a stretcher.
Yes? Yes? Go on.
They're still throwing shots.
Yes? Can you hear them?
Yes.
You see them?
No.
All right. Where are they taking you now?
Put me in a truck.
Why are you fearful now?
I don't know it.
You don't want any more. You want to forget it. But you're going to remember it because it's gone now. It's gone. You're back here now. You're away from Okinawa. You've forgotten it. But you remember who you are now. Who are you?
Dolly.
Dolly, that's right. Full name now.
Dominic Dolly.
Dominic Dolly, that's right. You know your mother's name?
Isabel.
That's right. Father's?
Salvatore.
That's fine. You know who they all are now. All right, now you're coming back with us. This is going to stay with you. You're going to remember it all. You're going to remember about Okinawa. You're going to remember about the shells and the bombs, but they're gone. You're at ease and relaxed. There's no fear, no anxiety. When I wake you up, you'll be comfortable and relaxed, no pains and no aches. But you'll remember all that I've told you. All that you've remembered. You can wake now. Well, how are you?
Pretty good.
Under the guidance of the psychiatrist, he is able to regard his experience in its true perspective as a thing of the past, which no longer threatens his safety. Now he can remember.
This was my introduction into psychiatry. And in the hospital, I took a foreshortened course in psychiatry. I read as I crammed and read books on psychiatry, and then I had excellent psychiatrists to turn to and ask questions of.
And they were very progressive, the ones who were working with.
Extremely. And they could, they would. There was no nonsense in their answers, and there was no pretension, by the way, that they were curing these patients. What they were doing was putting a fire out, an attempt to restore the men to more or less the condition they were in when they came into the army.
Visitors' Day. Now the men resume their contact with the world outside. These are the people they are coming back to, whose lives are bound up with theirs. Without their understanding, all that has been accomplished in the last few weeks can be torn down. With it, their return to life can be doubly swift and sure. The weeks have slipped by fast. The first strangeness of hospital life has become routine. Sometimes a man learns something new. The Ranger always did want to play guitar.
That group made better progress in getting back, getting there, in recovering, than other groups who weren't being photographed.
You know in the Bible where it says, man does not live by bread alone? Children don't grow up well without safety and confidence. If that wasn't in one's childhood, in growing up, you could say, now there was something missing during all that time. Now the next question is how to supply it. And it does need to be supplied. Not all of the learning in all of the books is half as valuable in getting over nervousness as to find someone that you esteem, that you can learn to feel safe with, where you can get a feeling of being accepted, of cherished, where you get a feeling that you're worthwhile and that you are important to someone. You could say, the feeding that you didn't get, that's something more than bread. When you were little, you still need to get it. You still need to be fed acceptance and to find the safety. In other words, knowledge alone is not enough.
The doctors were extraordinary with them. As a matter of fact, that was the theme of their recovery. Love. and reassuring the men and advising them as to how to go about finding it. I think that's in the picture, isn't it?
Hold! Nobody got it! Get up! Get up! Get up!
8 weeks have passed. What about these men? Are they ready for discharge? How complete is their recovery? How about the boy in right field?
I just didn't care what happened to me.
How about the kid at bat?
Foxhole was covered by dirt. And I was covered up for 29 hours afterwards till they found me.
How about this kid? How about him? Are they well enough to be discharged? That is for the doctors to decide at tomorrow's boarding.
When it was decided that they wouldn't show the picture, and there was quite an outcry. The papers, a number of newspapers who had heard about it, one or two critics, some people that were not in the government or not in the army, in the medical profession, so on, wrote that the picture, it was required that the picture be seen, and so this put the authorities on their mettle, and they proceeded to reenact the picture. Their case was that it would be, for not showing the picture, was that it would infringe on the privacy of the individuals. And in line with that kind of thinking, why they proceeded to make a picture with actors, which was wretched and dismal and useless.
Men, this is your last military formation. Today, you're returning to your homes, your families, and friends. Many of you have been looking forward eagerly to this day. But remember that when you re-enter civilian life, on your shoulders falls much of the responsibility for the post-war world. May your lives as civilians be as worthy as your records as soldiers. Good health, good fortune, and Godspeed.
I was never able to distinguish, really, between writing and directing. Writing and directing always seemed to me to be an extension, a projection of the writing, a kind of refinement of it, if you will. No, I suppose. Of course, there was little or no directing in those pictures. The only direction was tactical. Where do you put your cameras, and then how to tell the story, or how to let the story tell itself. I didn't impose anything on the story. The stories were sufficient.